everyone, this is Misha and I am sharing another deck with you today. Today we have a tarot deck that I found on Etsy. Oh, I'm gonna say by accident, but is anything ever really an accident? It kind of came to me at a time when I was just looking for a shadow deck, and I found this one and was just really fell in love with the artwork. This is the Cursed Auguries tarot deck, and it was designed and illustrated by a Spanish artist. I apologize if I mess up your name, but it's Ana Sora, and she is on Etsy. You can look up the Cursed Auguries tarot deck and you'll find it. I have to say that I ordered this right around April. I ordered several tarot decks and oracle decks from different places to use in my online monthly tarot class and oracle deck that I offer. And this one arrived super quick, which was really surprising to me because with everything that was going on in the world in 2020 at that time, the mail was really slow. And one of those decks coming from New Zealand took almost 4 months to arrive, but this one came in like a week or two. So I was really impressed with that. And let's dive in. We'll take a look and I'll explain like what I mean by a shadow deck and everything. So the box is pretty standard. It's not the best material. It didn't really survive the trip. Like I said, it came from Spain and it didn't do so hot on the traveling. It really, it's beautiful, and you can tell just by looking at the box that this is going to be a gorgeous deck. But I actually had trouble opening it, unfortunately, and so the box ripped a little bit, and it was already ripped a little bit in transit too. And that is not the artist's fault. That is 100% our mail system. But this is a deck that I probably won't store in this box. I will probably find a really beautiful bag or a nice box to store it in, because the box is, it's just pretty, like I said, it's pretty standard, and I don't think it'll hold up very long. So there's that. So the deck itself, to me, feels really good in my hands. The cards are a pretty standard size. There is no book. So if you're the kind of person that enjoys reading the book and understanding like what the artist was kind of thinking about, there isn't one, but there is this card which invites you to follow your intuition and go deep into the woods with this tarot deck that blends together the iconography from pagan traditions and the old craft and Christian imagery through the prism of folk magic. To me, that was really beautiful. And one of the reasons why this deck doesn't really need a book, she actually mentions, she invites you to use this deck's narrative to discover your own storytelling and the interpretation of the metaphors that were built on the cycles of life, death, and nature. And this is actually the third edition, which is really neat because I've never seen this deck before. The back of the cards are gorgeous. So she has the apples, which stand in for the pentacles in this deck. She has the wood, which stands in for the wands, the nails, which stand in for the swords, and then the moon kind of represents the cups with the imagery that she decided to use for the cups. So the cards are, I don't know if you'd really consider this a gloss or not, but you can kind of see that the light is reflecting off of them. But they have almost, I don't know if I can show you, sorry for the back camera work. It's like a texture. So it reminds me almost of fabric, and that's kind of neat and unique to see in the card. And it's pretty much standard size. You can see me holding it in my hand. So I know a lot of people really enjoy majors, but I'm not going to start there. I will go through them, I promise, but I wanted to show everyone something else first, which you may see this and then be like, oh, that's a deal breaker, and I don't want to get that deck, because the minors, I'm just going to start with my favorite suit in this particular deck. This is the cups. That's the ace. So it's a tadpole or some other kind of amphibian emerging from an egg. Sounds great, right? Well, here is the 2. And then we have the 3. And so this is a deck that, if you're not comfortable with making your own personal narrative, or if you don't know the meanings of the minors, this might be a challenge to you. I don't necessarily think that that means that you can't use this deck at all. I think you can actually get really creative and use this deck as a way to get more comfortable with those meanings and also to challenge yourself. But one thing I want to tell you is that all of the numerical cards in the minors, so not the court cards, but all of the numerical cards are like that. So I've seen this before in some decks, and this is actually a really traditional way for the minors to be represented. But sometimes, even if they're done this way, you can kind of tell a little bit by the way the artist has drawn them. But for me, this is a little hard to tell. Like what, you know, here's your 9 and your 10. And if you're just glancing at these quickly, I don't even know if you'd be able to tell them apart without counting or looking at the actual words on the cards. So if you are a tarot reader that really likes to be able to look at the minor images and be able to read them clearly, that could be a consideration for you. I don't care. I love this deck so much that if I have to sit there with a book and refer to it that just tells me basic tarot meanings, I will do it, because this deck to me is that awesome. But some people are not super thrilled about that. And when I bought this deck, I bought it for the pictures of the majors that I saw, and I did not know that this was how the minors were done. It probably says it in the description on Etsy. I just didn't really read it. And so I wanted to let folks know that right off the bat, that was the type of deck they were dealing with. Again, I think it's beautiful, and for me personally, that is not going to stop me from working with this deck, but it is something to keep in mind. The court cards, though, are illustrated. And so just to kind of give you an idea, here's your Page of Cups. Gorgeous, right? So we've got the Page of Cups, the Knight of Cups, the Queen of Cups, and then our King of Cups, fully grown, diving into the world. So gone are our baby froglets. We have the adult diving in to make the most of that water. Full expression of the suit. So again, the court cards are illustrated out for you, whereas the minors are not. And that's actually not super unusual for a more traditional expression of the tarot cards. So here's your pentacles. We've got the apple sliced in half with a star. I think this is so clever, because usually when we look at the pentacle suit, it's a coin or a circle with like a star in the middle. Sometimes people think of it as a pentagram. That helps them remember. But that circle with the star, when you cut an apple in half, you get a round object with a star inside. And so how brilliant is that? And I also love, for this one in particular, clever with the ace, the apple is sprouting. So new beginnings. And then you can see here too, it's pretty much the same thing. So you've got, as we talked about just a moment ago, with the cups. And these, I feel like, to me, these are a little bit more, sorry, I'm holding them in a funky way. These are a little bit more visually different for me anyway. So again, it's just what you prefer. The pages are always spider related. So if you are triggered by spiders, this might not be the deck for you, because you're gonna see the spiders come up a couple times. The knights are snakes. This is probably one of my favorite cards, the Knight of Pentacles, which for me personally is really cool, because I don't really ever like to work with the pentacles. And I saw this card in the deck when I first opened it and went, oh my gosh, this makes me feel like I can work with that Knight of Pentacles energy. So for me, that was really, really neat. The queens are rabbits. So here's a little rabbit diving into a bushel of apples. And the kings are different. The kings are usually an expression of that suit. So you don't necessarily get a specific animal, but you get an expression of the overall vision of whatever symbol is being used for that suit. So I'll just go ahead and show you some of the other cards. The swords, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, are nails. And again, the aces are a little bit more illustrative. So here's the Ace of Swords. And I should have probably kicked this off, and I will add a trigger warning. If you're uncomfortable with things like blood or bones or impaling things on your hands, this might not be the best deck for you. So again, just the swords are very straight up. There's the Five of Swords. When we get into the court cards, again, we do have that spider imagery, really neat variation on the page. We've got the knight. You got your snake again. The queen is watching you. And again, the king is a nail firmly driven into that tree, standing strong. So the final suit of this deck that we are reviewing today, the Cursed Auguries Tarot, is the wands. And your wands are branches or sticks. So there's your ace. Interesting that it is snapped in half. Again, real simple imagery with your minor cards. And you know, it's up to you whether or not you are comfortable working with that, of course. I will show you the court cards now. So again, we have spider for the page, snake for the knight. What I really love about this card, the Knight of Wands is one of my favorite archetypes in the deck, and or personality cards, you could even say. And what I really love about this is I feel like you have this snake that's kind of slithering quickly through the brush, maybe crushing through. And, you know, are they paying attention to the fact that, yeah, you've got a pretty clear path there, but there's some thorny things that might reach out and grab you if you go in a little too headstrong. So I really like that representation. I also really love this Queen of Wands. So strong. And then your final, the king, is full on fire. Gorgeous, gorgeous. Look at the detail. It's just absolutely spectacular. So now that we have gone over those minor cards, let's take a look at the majors. So I'll go ahead and do a full flip through of the majors so that folks can see them, because again, I know that some folks just really want to see all them cards, so we will go with it. And I'll go pretty quick. So we have the Fool. The Fool is the spider imagery. Again, we've got the fly, or presumably an insect, cocooned up, ready to be eaten by the spider, which is one way to look at this. And that's kind of a dark way to start off your deck, right? But you can also look at it as new beginning, because from death we have life. So that is the beginning of the journey, that idea of rebirth. The Magician is a stag. Beautiful. I won't go through meanings of all of these. I'm just will show them to you. I often, heard me say this before, I often judge a deck by the High Priestess card. Look at this High Priestess, gorgeous. I feel like she is out in the woods worshiping. It's super pagan-y, but I love it. She's even kind of looks like she's been rolling around in the brambles. She's cut by them, but she is still standing strong. And I just think that is absolutely gorgeous. The Empress is a toad or a frog. To me, that's more of a toad though, because it's in a hole. So she's emerging. And interestingly, if you think about the fact that the cups in this deck are all the baby frogs or toads, it kind of makes sense that the card that is talking about like fertility and the divine feminine gives birth to an entire suit. I know that she's not always associated with that cup suit necessarily, depending upon who you ask,
but it's kind of a neat way to look at it. And then here we have the Emperor, the frog carrying the babies on its back, which to me is really interesting. This is a mostly, I guess you could say, gender neutral deck in some ways. So you could argue whether this is the female or the male carrying the eggs and the new potential on its back, building worlds, right? Like the Emperor, you think of that card as being, oh man, like the master of the universe. Sometimes I think of it, and I just think that's a really neat way to see that expressed. This is another one of my favorite cards. This is your Hierophant. Absolutely beautiful. The Lovers. I love it. And I'm just going to share a little bit of nature and nerdery here for a moment. Different types of snails are, well, they can actually kind of switch gender. They will almost like battle to see who gets to be the male by impaling the other one on their reproductive structure, which in some males is, or some species rather, is called a love dart. And I love this idea because in this one, like, which of these creatures is the male and which is the female? Like we don't even really, they may not even know. They're just going at it. And for me, that's a really neat way to interpret the Lovers. I don't know if the artist knew that or not, but I think it's pretty cool. Here's the Chariot. One thing interesting about that, someone might look at that and think like, well, but snails are so slow. And they are, but look at how many there are. We always think of snails as moving very slowly, but here in Florida, we have the invasive apple snail, and one snail can lay thousands of eggs. So even while it may be moving very slowly, its kin and offspring, so if you think of it out of like the ideas and what it creates, can take over very quickly. Strength, again, if you're at all triggered by blood, this is probably not the card for you, but we have the rabbit fighting the serpent. And I'm going to just go ahead and give a trigger warning over this next card rather, because this one, you might find it a little gross. So I'm going to tell you that it is a woman with or a person rather, with a spider in their mouth. So close your eyes for a second if that doesn't appeal to you, but if you're into things that are a little bit darker, things that are a little bit more, golly, just allegories for that idea of, going internally, like what is inside, what lays inside, what do we need to hermit and find and see in the dark, and what comes forward. That's an amazing card. Here's another, okay, so the next couple cards, we're just gonna go for trigger warnings for the next couple. This next card is the Wheel of Fortune, and it involves teeth and bones. So here we have a wreath of teeth and bones. And one of the things that I really love about this card is it makes me think of bone divination. And so I think that's kind of a neat idea of going to see the wise person and they throw the bones for you. Our Justice, oh man. Every time I see this card, it kind of makes me want to cry. It's a heart impaled by all of those nails, those swords that we'll see coming up later. And imagine like all the times our heart is hurt by injustices. And if we pluck each one of those nails out, perhaps we could bring in a sense of justice. And exactly how many nails does it take before our heart starts to seek justice? The Hanged Man, we have the hare and the rabbit and the serpent from Strength. Now the rabbit is in the serpent's coils. So the battle has moved from the rabbit attacking the snake to the snake holding the serpent. The serpent holding the hare. Talking about that Christian symbolism rather, we have the Death card. And I feel like that's pretty straightforward. Thinking about the crucifixion and the resurrection. Now we have the Temperance card, and our old friends, the hare and the serpent, are back, and this time the hare is having to learn to really embody that idea of temperance as they have found themselves in a hatchery of serpents. All these baby snakes are hatching out, and so the hare is going to have to employ every ounce of patience and finding that balance. The Devil reminds me so much of the some of the classic pagan interpretations of that spirit. And the tower, oh, again, trigger warning. It's just a tower of teeth. And, you know, when I think about something that's going to represent, you know, something really life-changing or horrifying happening, I think of teeth. Not really. But I do find this to be as shocking as some of the tower cards I've seen in other decks. You know, there's sometimes when we have dreams about losing teeth, there's like a whole thing wrapped up in there. So you could argue that this is kind of carrying on that, or imagine like some sort of villainous creature living in the woods stacking up teeth. It's pretty creepy. So this next couple, I guess the next series of cards is pretty much the reason I bought the deck. I saw the one in particular and just went, oh my gosh, this is completely and totally the deck for me, and that is the Star card. It is gorgeous. We've got a skull just right on that beautiful apple with the star. So we have the symbolism of the star there, but also some of the pagan-y goodness. And I just think that is absolutely beautiful. The other deck that the other card rather, that I just love in the deck is the moon. So we have the moon with Datura, Lady Datura, the poisonous plant, or you could also consider this possibly moonflower, bringing in that botanical symbolism of the moon with the skull. And then the next card that also holds that skull symbolism is the sun. So we have the sunflowers, which are often seen on sun-themed tarot cards, with that skull as well, which I think is just really well done. Earlier we had the heart with justice. Now we have the heart with judgment. And I love the fact that the heart is no longer being impaled by things. Instead, now it's being held strongly with great strength. And even though it may be a little damaged, you can see it's bleeding. It is making good and solid choices and solid judgment. And then the final card of this deck is the World. So you may have heard in some of my other videos that I often, not judge a deck, but I often pick my decks based on a lot of things, but I especially like to look at the High Priestess, the Tower card rather, and the World as well. And, you know, I love this card because here's this skull, and even though all of its teeth are broken out, it's still sitting atop a beautiful bed of crystals. So even if you have some things that damage you, you can still find yourself in a place of beauty and magic. And so that is the Cursed Auguries deck by the Spanish artist Ana Sora, and it is available on Etsy. I am Misha, and I hope you enjoyed this little deck review.